This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined the Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. Hey, what's up, and welcome to QnA, the show where I take your questions and answer them here, video format. A ton of questions to answer. Let's just jump into it. First question comes from Ascendant, who says, "Hey Q, you mentioned in your run game video that running back and interior offensive line draft class is good. But what do we think about tight ends? It looks like there would be plenty of guys who can help both us in the pass and run games. Warren and Fainton Jr. early, Evans and Ferguson in the mid rounds, Veiling and Brenning Stool late. Do you think the Browns should lead the draft with two of each, running back, tight end, and interior offensive line?" I think they should be smart about where they try to poach some talent from this draft class. It depends on who's available in what round, is always, right? I don't want you to just try to hit a quota and say, oh, we got to take two tight ends from this draft class, two running backs, two interior offensive linemen, no matter what. So it really depends on who's there. I would say this: if the right two running backs are available in the right two spots, yeah, why not? If the right two interior offensive linemen are there in the right spots, yeah, why not? If the right two tight ends are there in the right two spots, yeah, why not? Like, I don't think the Browns are going into this draft really restricted on who they can draft at what position. This team just won 3 games. They can use help in talented players wherever they can get it. So, yeah, I think they're going to go best player available in a lot of these picks. And if best player available takes them that direction, then I think they're fine with it. But I don't think they go into the draft with that on their mind, thinking, oh, yeah, we're going to get X amount of running backs, X amount of tight ends, X amount of guards or centers. But yeah, I think they'll go into it thinking about best player available. Dale says, with Highsmith playing in Pittsburgh Sunday, what can the Browns do to keep Watt from getting in the backfield? Get rid of that ball quickly. It's just as simple as that. This is not a week for Jameis to be sitting back there thinking about it a ton. This is a week to kind of get rid of that ball early, get the ball early to David Njoku on 1st and 10, let him run. Yeah, they're going to be able to rush the passer, right? They're going to be able to get to the quarterback. They're going to be able to create pressures. They're going to be able to generate chaos with all of their edge rushers back, right? Because they got Watt, they got Preston, they got Alex Highsmith, they got Nick Herbig, who's quietly been like one of the best defensive rookies in the NFL. Well, not rookies, defensive second-year players in the NFL. They got a lot of dudes who can get to the quarterback, right? Cam Hayward's in that conversation as well. They're going to be able to get to the quarterback. The Browns have to neutralize that by getting rid of the ball quickly. They're not going to have much of a run game. Maybe if they have some delayed run plays, this is the week to do it. But I don't think they trust those plays, and they trust that they have the personnel to be able to run those plays. So, yeah, they're going to have to get rid of this ball quickly. That's going to be a thing. RJ Sports Page says, "What's up, Q? My question is, if you guys are high enough in the draft, would you want ASHTON, JEANTY, or Travis Hunter?" I lean towards JEANTY because he fits more of a need. Now, I will say this. JEANTY does not seem like the type of running back that you can just throw behind any offensive line. Like, you're going to set yourself up for disappointment if you're expecting him to just break your offensive line, right? Like, even Saquon Barkley, as supremely talented as he is, was not able to do that. Same thing with Christian McCaffrey. Like, the Browns need to put some things in place in order for a running back to be successful. But do I think ASHTON JEANTY is a talented enough player to draft, and then while you have him, develop a offensive line so then you can get to his peak performance later in his career? Yes, I do. Especially since for the first part of his career, he could split carries with Nick Chubb. So I probably would lean JEANTY. Travis Hunter is going to be interesting, but I don't think Travis Hunter is the best corner in this draft. And if he's not the best corner in the draft and we're not going to use him as a gadget player, then what's really the value there for Travis Hunter? Like, that's the big issue with Travis Hunter in the draft for me, is like, the most special thing about Travis is how good he is on both sides of the ball. But if you don't plan to use him like that, then how much does that matter anymore when we're talking about the context of the draft? Because either you have to look at him as a wide receiver and try to use him as a prospect there, or look at him as a corner. If you look at him as a corner, he's good. He's top 3 in this class for sure. But you can make the argument he's not one. If you're looking at him as a wide receiver, I mean, like, I don't know if he's better than Emeka Egbuka as a wide receiver alone, but he's really good. He's a first-round pick if he only plays wide receiver. But what makes him special isn't that he's particularly special at just one or the other position, is that he's really good at both of those positions. But what does that mean in the NFL? How do you use that in the NFL? Like, part of the thing that's hesitating teams on Travis Hunter is his injuries situation, right? He always misses games. At Jackson State, he missed games. The 1 year he was down there in Colorado, he's missed games. It feels like a size thing and a number of plays thing. But again, even in the FCS, he got banged up a bit. And it's not like the Big 12 is the NFL. So if he got banged up in the Big 12, he's going to get banged up in the NFL. So you're probably not going to play him on both sides in the NFL. So what do you do with him? Like, what makes Travis Hunter a better prospect than the top corner or the top wide receiver in this draft class? What does he have to provide extra as a hybrid player to make that happen? Like, how many snaps on offense do you need from Travis Hunter in order to justify it? Because if you feel like you can play him on both sides, then all of a sudden it makes a lot of sense to take him. But if you don't feel like Travis, like, if you're going into this and you're thinking, hey, Travis can play both sides in the NFL, which I don't think any team is thinking, and you're like, he could play, the second most snaps at corner, and he could play the third most snaps at wide receiver, which is ambitious as hell. When you're saying Travis Hunter could do that in the NFL, then all of a sudden that's something that he's going to go number 1 overall, because now you're saying, I can get a slot receiver and a number 2 corner with one guy. That's incredible value. But if you just look at him as a corner, if you just look at him as a wide receiver, now he falls back into the wherever you would draft Will Johnson or wherever you would draft Ted McMillan. It's kind of the tough thing with Travis Hunter and how I'm interested to see how teams are going to develop that. Ultimately, he has a ton of hype around his name. And when you have that much hype around your name, you're probably going to get drafted as early as possible, because some owner is going to be like, nah, I got to take him. But I'm interested to see how talent evaluators view that and view what box to put Travis Hunter in and how to evaluate that. Or maybe it's a projection game where they're like, hey, if he's this good playing both positions, maybe if he just plays corner, he'll be even better. But then you have to ask a question can he stay healthy? Lots to ask with Travis. With JEANTY, he's going to be a good running back. Quentin Gray says, which player would you pick in the draft to help restart the Browns, regardless of where we fall in the draft or needs? Which player would I pick in the draft? Like, if I could just pick one player to kind of focus a rebuild around in this draft class, I don't know if that dude is in this draft class, to be honest with you. There's a lot of guys who will be a lot of really good players, right? But build your franchise around, I don't think that this draft class has that, right? I don't think they have it at quarterback. I don't think they have that at offensive line, at edge rusher, like none of the franchise positions. Is there a player that I'm like, nah, that dude could be a franchise? I could be wrong on that, but I don't see that, right? Like Shedeur Sanders, I see him as somebody who could be a good quarterback, similar to Geno Smith, but your championship odds aren't going to change because you got Shedeur Sanders, in my opinion. He's going to be another solid quarterback if he goes to the right situation and gets the right things in his development. if you look at, like we just had the conversation about Travis Hunter, really good two-way prospect, but he's not going to be a two-way player in the NFL. So you have to look at him as a wide receiver prospect or a corner prospect. And as a corner prospect, he's a really, really good corner prospect, but he's not like Sauce Gardner coming out of Cincinnati or something like that, right? Where it was just like no doubt about what that was going to be immediately with him, right? There's more questions. He's not a prototypical, he's prototypical in some ways, but he just doesn't have he has those size and weight concerns about him. As a wide receiver, he's not a generational wide receiver prospect. Same thing goes with anybody else in this draft class. I don't see anybody as the franchise guy, but I do see a lot of guys who can help that franchise guy, right? If you have him. And fortunately for the Browns, you have a franchise guy in Myles Garrett. So, you can draft a quarterback who might not be a franchise quarterback, but still could be a decent starter. Like, maybe that's where you go with it, right? That's why I'm looking more towards the late first, second round, third round conversation for quarterback this year, because I think there's a couple guys who could potentially hit at those spots if they stay at those spots. But yeah, I don't think there's a single person in this draft class, I think, that will be a build the franchise around them player. Justin says, in the scenario that the Browns aren't enamored with the quarterback options, would they take Trey Lance as a developmental guy for a late round pick, assuming they brought back Jameis, a legit guy to compete ahead of him in DTR? Yeah, maybe they do something like that. I don't know if Trey Lance is going to be the guy. The fact is that Trey Lance failed to catch on in San Francisco in the same offense that Kevin wants to run. So I don't think Kevin's going to try to make that same mistake twice. There's clearly something there with Trey that just ain't right? The Dallas Cowboys don't want to go with him. Kyle Shanahan don't want to go with him. That's two teams back-to-back that seem to be very hesitant about letting this dude play in NFL games. So I don't know if I would go after it. Maybe it's like a camp arm, but I wouldn't trade resources for him. I think it's possible that they go after a developmental guy. I think that developmental guy could be like maybe Justin Fields is something that they look at, or like who else would be a develop? Like Malik Willis would be somebody they go after. Maybe Will Levis, if they give up on him, could be somebody they go after. Or maybe they decide to just get that in the draft this year. Carson Beck would make sense for the Browns. I know a lot of people are cold on Carson Beck because of the season that he's had, but this is somebody who is projected to be a really good fit for what Kevin Stefanski did when he had NFL talent at wide receiver last year at Georgia. This year, he doesn't have that same talent. He doesn't look as good, but you got to look at the whole process for these prospects, all of the years they played in college football, and you can't hyper focus on one year because it's good or 1 year because it's bad. I think Carson Beck is still an option for the Cleveland Browns. Somewhere going along that option, right? If Cade Klubnik decides to declare this year, or Drew Aller decides to declare this year, somewhere along that line, looking at guys like that. But yeah, like even like a Garrett Nussmeier or somebody like that would be competition for DTR. So I do expect them to do that. I don't think that they have to seek. I don't think that Trey Lance or like any of the other guys that would be out there are more attractive than just taking somebody in the third round, in my opinion. Like, I don't think that Trey Lance is even more attractive than just having DTR just be your third string guy. But thank you for the question. Next question comes from Boof, who says, what 5 changes would you make in the offseason that would make the Browns a playoff contender? 1, get stronger in the interior, bigger and stronger. I need more weight, more size on the interior. The Browns have been so bad in giving up negative runs for a while. I think that has a lot to do with size, right? The defensive tackles are getting behind the line of scrimmage pretty easily because we don't have the size to match up with them. I would like to get bigger. right? You're going to give up explosive plays if you get bigger on the offensive line, but I don't need my run game to be explosive. I need my pass game to be explosive. I'm fine with my passing game, struggling to, not struggling, but not being as proficient, getting 3 or 4 yards. I need that out my run game. In my opinion, to play winning football, I need the run game to be that. So, number one, get bigger on the interior, get stronger on the interior so you can run the ball for consistent gains on a consistent basis. Number two, got to get bigger on the interior of the defensive line or at linebacker. The Browns have let the middle of this defense be too exposed to run games. They can't do anything against halfback draws. We got to do something about allowing teams to get easy yardage. Because when this Browns defense has a team pinned back, for the most part, in 3rd and 10 and 2nd and 10, they're dominant. The issue is it's too easy to get to 3rd and 3 on this defense because we don't have a presence in the interior of this defense that's consistent. And the only guy we have over 300 pounds at the defensive tackle room is Dalvin Tomlinson. And who knows how long he's going to be here. So that's another thing that I would add to that list. I don't know if I got 5, to be honest with you. So those are 2 huge things. Just get bigger overall, right? Like, I think the NFL's getting physical and more run based. Got to get more size here at certain positions. Let's see. One more third change. Make sure Deshaun Watson never plays quarterback for this team again. However you have to hide him is how you have to hide him. However we have to get around that contract is how you have to get around that contract. But I promise you this, the team will be better off without him. So moving on from Deshaun Watson, that's another change. Getting rid of the special teams coordinator, Bubba Ventrone, and signing the number 1 kicker in spring football, whoever that may be, in this offseason. 5 changes. The Browns will be playoff contenders if they got a better run game, they got a little bit better against the run, and then had better special teams performance, better quarterback play, and a consistent kicker they can rely on. Bam, 5 right there. And they're a playoff team. All right. Shoppy says, AB will draft for value, but setting that aside, what is top 3 draft position priority order of now with current knowledge about this draft class? Have a good weekend, Q. The way you want to look at like positional value is a little bit different from when you're at the top of the draft, when you have like the 24th pick, like from round to round. A lot of people will hear this is a strong running back class, this is a strong tight end class, and think, oh, we got to take all the running backs, all the tight ends. But when there's a strong class, that means you can wait on that position. There's a lot of options. Where there is not a ton of options in this draft class is corner, is wide receiver. Quarterback, there's only one guy you could really take in the first round right now. Maybe you could take Cam Ward in the first round, but I don't think Cam Ward should be taken by this team. I think the only quarterback you could justify if you're the Browns taken in the first round, early in the first round, is Shedeur Sanders. And I'm iffy on that. Like, I don't love that pick if you take Shedeur. Back into the second round, I think you can justify a couple of extra names. Second round, I think you can justify a couple of extra names. Third round, I think you can justify a lot of names at quarterback, right? So I will wait on quarterback. Tackle, there's like 2. I think you can get 2 of them at the back end of the first. But if you want to tackle, you probably want to take that dude before pick 15, right? Connor Williams, Josh Simmons, unless Josh Simmons falls because his medicals are terrible. But if that's the case, you might not want to draft him. So I would say, just in general, best defensive player available is in one of those spots. So Mason Graham, Abdul Carter, Will Campbell, Will Johnson, my bad, the cornerback out of Michigan. Like, if you get the number 1 best defensive player in this draft class and you're sitting there like 8, you got to consider taking him. So that would be number 1 there for me. Number 2 would probably be offensive line, because I think the quality of offensive linemen that you have in the top half of this first round is significantly different from everywhere else in this draft class, and then wide receiver, right? Because I think the same thing happens. I think there's a steep fall off after the first round when it comes to wide receiver. So those three positions, I think, are going to be where the Browns focus. So just best player available defense. If you get Mason Graham, if you get something crazy slip to you, you kind of just got to take it and build on your strength and then use your other picks to add. And then the other two positions. Appreciate that question. Vandy says, hey, Q, if the Browns beef up their run game back to a traditional Kevin-style offense, do you think it could raise Jameis's floor enough for a deep playoff run? I was always, Jameis was a top talent whose floor is unsteady. Could Kevin's offense stop that and keep him playing at his best? A deep playoff run? I doubt it. I doubt it. Like, my biggest thing about the playoffs and what you need to win in the playoffs at the quarterback position is you need consistency. You need somebody who, against the best competition for 4 weeks straight, is going to consistently play plus level football at quarterback. Jameis Winston is a lot of things. A lot of good things, some bad things. What he has never been confused for ever in his football career is consistent. Like, that is the big Achilles heel with Jameis Winston. When it comes to his arm talent, he has always been an inconsistently accurate quarterback. That's been his big thing. You look through all his tape, no matter where he plays, no matter how much you limit him on offense, no matter how little you throw him or how much you throw him, Jameis has always had an issue, play to play, being accurate as a passer on a consistent basis. Some games he got it. Some games he doesn't. Some weeks he got it. Some weeks he doesn't. Maybe you can make a deep playoff run with Jameis because he gets hot for like the right 4 weeks. But that's betting on a lot. I don't know about deep playoff run. Could you make the playoffs with Jameis? Sure. I don't think that's crazy. Right? Like, I think that's fine. You can make the playoffs with Jameis. It's just going to be hard to make any definitive plans about what your team going to do when Jameis is your quarterback, because the Achilles heel with Jameis isn't that he's not capable of putting up great numbers or that he's not capable of playing well. It's that he's capable of playing a number of ways any given Sunday. And some of those options are really, really bad. Some of those options are really, really good. Sometimes he's just like in between, right? But that's been the issue. And it would be tough it would be a lot of hubris for Kevin Stefanski to think that, like, out of the 13 years we done seen Jameis Winston, like, I've been watching Jameis Winston play football on a big stage since 2012, 2013, since I was in high school, brother. Y'all call me old in the comment section consistently. I've been watching Jameis Winston since I was in high school. And Jameis Winston has never, in any period of that of my life when I've been watching him, been a consistent quarterback. Especially when it comes to accuracy. He was doing that at Florida State. Same thing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You can limit some of it. You can get it to a point to where you can win games with it for sure. But we talking about like a deep playoff run, that's going to rear his head, right? Like, that's just going to rear his head. Jared said, hypothetically, if the Browns simplified their defense, somehow returned to 2023 form, would that negate Jameis's interception problem? If so, could the Browns go back to championship contenders? It's another interesting way to ask this question, right? If the Browns defense is elite and they're back to getting 3 and outs at that ridiculously high clip that they were getting them in 2023, is that a form of football that could be championship contending with Jameis Winston at quarterback? I think it would matter, like, what kind of interceptions are Jameis Winston throwing, right? I don't mind when Jameis Winston throws a downfield interception. The interceptions that Jameis Winston absolutely needs to cut out in order to achieve what you said are the field outs. So when he's throwing all the way to the opposite side of the field, trying to hit somebody on the sideline, that's the hardest throw in football. And the reason that's the hardest throw in football is there's no margin of error. If you miss on that throw, it's a pick six. We saw this thoroughly on Monday night. He likes to throw those. He's been told not to throw those before. He still has thrown those everywhere he's gone. So that's the thing, right? Like, can you mitigate it? Yeah. But some of Jameis Winston's interception problems aren't that he just turns the ball over, it's that he creates points for the other team. And we saw what that did to the 2023 Browns, where that ended up being too much of a hurdle for them to get over. So I would say it's going to be really hard again for you to be a championship contender, no matter what the circumstances is. With Jameis Winston as your quarterback. But honestly, it's the same exact thing with literally anybody else who's not going to be a franchise quarterback. Because Jameis is going to be inconsistent in that way, but somebody like Sam Darnold will be inconsistent in a different way. If you get Justin Fields, he'll be inconsistent in a different way. Like, you're not going to find a perfect quarterback in whatever. If you win a championship with any of those levels of quarterbacks, you're going to have to do it on a tight margin. That's why being able to win a championship without a franchise quarterback just doesn't get done that often, especially when you're playing that non-franchise quarterback all season, right? Like, you could get a run off with Nick Foles and get lucky like that, but a whole season when you're starting some mid, it's a little difficult, right? Like, that's where it gets problematic. But appreciate the question there. Last question of the day. What's the difference between Jameis and Brett Favre? They both seem to throw caution to the wind, but everybody thinks that Jameis is not able to win a Super Bowl, even though Brett Favre did. So, all right. So I don't know if you watch Brett Favre play, right? Because a lot of Brett Favre's prime happened even before my lifetime, right? Like, Brett Favre won an MVP before I was born, I believe, because I was born in 95. But go back and watch them Brett Favre tapes from the 90s. Jameis Winston and Brett Favre both make crazy decisions. The difference between Brett Favre and Jameis Winston is Brett Favre is one of the 5 most talented throwers of the football, just on pure arm talent alone, to have ever played in the NFL. Like, he's up there with Dan Marino. He's up there with Pat Mahomes. Brett Favre had generational arm talent. So those crazy throws that Brett Favre tried to make, or that Jameis Winston tried to make, well, Brett Favre is just more capable of doing that consistently. Now, again, I think a lot of this gets forgotten because now Brett Favre has shown himself not to be a very good person. So, like, that leads to people disrespecting the football that he played. But, hey, don't get it twisted, man. Jameis Winston and Brett Favre are in 2 different worlds of arm talent. Again, Brett Favre might be one of the 5 most talented throwers of the football this game has ever seen. Like, arm talent, insane. And maybe you're judging this based on, like, what he did as old man, gray hair Brett Favre. But keep in mind, he was doing some of that crazy stuff at 40. You imagine what that looked like when he was 22? Like, nah. Brett Favre has generational arm talent. Jameis Winston has very inconsistent arm talent. So from a decision-making standpoint, no, they're not that different. But from an ability to execute the decision-making standpoint, yeah, they're a world apart. Like, if Jameis Winston could throw like Brett Favre, he'd be in the Hall of Fame. But the problem is with Jameis, he can't throw like Brett Favre. That's why Brett Favre's able to win the Super Bowl like that, and only one Super Bowl like that. And Jameis Winston probably not able to win a Super Bowl with that, right? The arm talent difference is insane. Again, I can't do it justice. You got to go back and watch some of the old Brett Favre. Like, watch that stuff in the 90s when he had, like, brown hair and all. Like, understand, Brett Favre, not a good person. Don't endorse what he did to the people of Mississippi at all. I don't mess with that. But we got to be honest about Brett Favre's, like, arm talent. He was crazy. Crazy arm talent. But that's the difference. If you're wondering why people treat it differently,
absolutely it's because the gap in arm talent is seismic. But that's it for Q&A. Appreciate you guys for asking the questions. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.